Your bottom bitch is the one who does the selling. You don't do the selling. The girl has to hear it from a girl.
Remember the last video I made when I said conservative commentators either maintained radio silence on Andrew Tate or gave lukewarm defense of him? Some of you who watched that video thought I was being uncharitable to conservatives, but boy were you wrong. The problem was I didn't go far enough in my critique of conservatives tolerating Andrew Tate, but it gets even worse. They now offer full frontal support and defense.
I don't think anybody is finding any clips from the last 5 to 6 years which have anything negative in them.
Right. I think you've changed. That's why I said over the last 5 years, I think there's been a seismic shift.
It's interesting to note that a movement which has moral values as a core tenet of the ideology have not devolved into one embracing and promoting people with questionable characters that are an opposite of what conservatives have preached for the longest time, all in the name of generating a buzz to draw attention to their content on social media. It's all about Benjamins, baby. Apparently, by the new conservative standard, the end justifies the means. Being remorseful for past wrong deeds is needless. Morals mean absolutely nothing. Promiscuity is allowed. Sex work is just work. Lying is a virtue, and human traffickers undergoing trial for human trafficking are victims.
So I agree with you.
The current queen of conservative YouTube, Candace Owens herself, revealed these new conservative standards in a recent interview with Andrew Tate, where she basically consigned all the degenerate things he's ever done. In summary, she agreed with the sentiment that the end justified the means, that remorse for past wrong acts is needless, and that morals mean absolutely nothing. The interview started out with a cordial introduction, with Candace Owens reminiscing about the first time she met Andrew Tate and congratulating him for breaking into the US market, whatever that means.
Andrew Tate.
Long time.
I know, it's been a very long time.
Very long time.
Actually, I met you downstairs at the Ritz.
Correct.
George and I were engaged at the time.
Yep.
And I probably was very swept up in George and barely got time to talk to you, but I do remember you being very polite. So it's interesting to fast forward to today, and you were very much in the UK circuit.
Yeah.
Now it seems like your celebrity is kind of really hitting the US market. They're kind of finding you for the first time.
See, this is all a business to these guys. They are not interested in causing real change. They're only interested in generating views through controversy. These people will be the last to want the culture war to end. Why would they, when they are feeding fat off it? In the interview, she highlighted that conservatives are under pressure to say something really awful about Andrew Tate.
There's a lot of pressure now on conservatives to say something really awful about you.
But maybe that's because Andrew Tate is the embodiment of the very thing conservatives preach against. And ironically, many of his fan base are young, right-leaning conservative men. It does make sense for conservatives to denounce him and make it clear that this guy is no good for their cause. But here we are having conservatives defend him because they don't really care for young men. They only care about keeping young men constantly outraged so they can seek out more right-wing content to massage their anger.
So I did see a mashup clip that we're not going to show because I thought it was unfair. I will say that.
Yeah.
Only because there was no context provided to the clips. It was just an extract of something that you said that 10 years ago. Some of them were literally 10 years ago.
Yep.
Didn't know what year it was from, didn't know who you were talking to, didn't know what context it was. And I've been victimized online by something like that before, where somebody takes something abstract and says, well, this is what must be what she means, until they're provided the full context of the clip.
Right off the bat, Candace offered an unsolicited defense of Andrew Tate by stating he was being unfairly treated because people dug up old clips of Tate taken out of context, and even gave an example of when she was taken out of context. So let's say it's true that Tate was taken out of context in those clips. A journalist would do her due diligence and watch the full videos from which those clips were taken out. If she had done that, she would have found out that those clips come up even worse in full context.
And I also take exception to, I think, digging back 10 years. I don't know who could survive that litmus test. I'm 34 years old today.
Yeah.
10 years ago. Today, I speak to my audience. I talk about, they call me puritanical. I talk about, not drinking.
Yeah.
I think the biggest change has been becoming a mother. Yeah. And it would really be unfair if we went and found Candace at 24 years old, liberal, dancing at One Oak, and said, well, look at these clips of Candace Owens. Fortunately, I had no cameras in my face 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You somehow did. So I think it's a bit unfair.
Oh, so Tate is being attacked for something he did years ago. Well, how long was years ago?
First off, how long ago was your webcam business?
Yeah, so I stopped having any involvement with it, I think 8 to 9 years ago.
The last 2 to 3 years, I've been making money on OnlyFans from its inception all the way up till now. I'm currently filming this during the COVID pandemic. You may be watching this later on, but right now during the pandemic.
There is even a more recent interview of 2022 where he's bragging about defrauding men of their wealth by posing as women.
So what I did is I unplugged their keyboards and plugged a new one in from me behind the screen. So the chicks would sit there and hit a keyboard that wasn't plugged in. And me and my brother, and eventually some staff I trained, would do all the talking. The girls were just famoosers, just laughing and doing this, their titties out. And they were talking to fucking ice cold hustlers. We were taking their money, all of it.
See, Tate wasn't just a pimp, he was also a scammer. He pretended to be what he's not, lied about the service he was supposed to offer. These men sent money thinking they were talking to a girl for which they would receive certain benefits later on, whether it be a relationship of sex or intimacy, not knowing that they were talking to a man who was never going to deliver on the promises made. How is this any different from India call center scammers or Nigerian internet fraudsters? It's exactly the same thing, and he's admitting to it all on camera, and some people have the nerve to say he's been witch hunted. Andrew Tate in that interview psychopathically stated that he didn't feel bad at all for these terrible things he did to men and women.
So you say you don't have any guilt for it.
I'm not sorry. I don't operate in that frame. I don't think it's an intelligent way for a man to go through life to say, I'm sorry. At a younger age, I did the best I could possibly do, and I did the best I believed at the time. And you grow from it and you learn. And perhaps there's times in your life where you look back and think, well, maybe I would have done this differently, because hindsight's always 20/20. But every rapper sold drugs. Like, you get to a certain stage in your career where you no longer sell drugs and you don't do it anymore. But that's part of the life journey, and life's messy. And I'm not going to sit here and apologize to any conservative who wants to sit me down and try and give me some moral high ground garbage. I'm not going to listen to it.
He goes on to describe in very fine details the process he used in scamming men.
One, I intimately understand the relationship between men and these websites.
And they were talking to fucking ice cold hustlers. We were taking their money, all of it. If they'd come and say, well, what kind of, bro, all of it. We were fucking milking them dry. I had these guys selling their houses, life savings, loans, all of it to me. Give me it all.
Did you feel bad or no?
Fuck no. To give a solitary fuck. To the point where we had these guys falling in love with my models, serious, big time in love, right? Sending crazy money. And they were convinced they were gonna meet the chick. This is almost where I kind of felt bad. Because they were like, can we meet? I've sent you $200,000. Can we meet? Can we meet? Can we meet?
The problem what was the most that one person sent to a model? Total.
Million?
Wow. Wow.
About a mil in about a year?
You don't feel bad at all.
Why the fuck would I care?
Yeah, I don't feel bad.
There's never been a criminal who has so self-snitched so hard as much as Andrew Tate. And I don't need a court ruling to come to the conclusion that even if the court finds him innocent, he wouldn't change my perception of him. One thing that was clear in that interview was Tate's narcissism that was on full display, despite his claim that he didn't want to come off as arrogant.
I don't want to say water off a duck's back. I don't want to come across as arrogant.
For someone who just said he didn't want to come off as arrogant, the next clip exemplifies how narcissistic and self-unaware this man is.
However, I do believe that since the dawn of human time, every single king with any kind of empire was constantly at war. And I think if you're going to become one of the most famous people on the internet, you're going to be at war. And you'd be a fool to become massively influential and then cry about the fact that you end up in constant battles. It doesn't matter if you're Napoleon or Charlemagne or Genghis Khan. There's always someone prodding the edges of your empire, trying to find weakness, see what a little bit of land they can take. And I think it's always been the same. And right now, I guess you could say, to a degree, I certainly have an empire and I'm massively influential. And there's a degree of, I wouldn't say jealousy, but there's certainly some ambitious people who are trying to damage it. I think that's what it is.
Finally, Candace asked him a question, which I thought was a brilliant question, by the way. How have you changed? And this was his response.
How have you transformed? And I've seen changes just, I think, in the last 5 years.
Yep.
Who are you today? How have you transformed?
That's a very good question. It's also very important when you talk about Candace from 10 years ago. The idea that you did something 10 years ago, which you would no longer agree with, is one thing. But the second thing, to come along to the conclusion that you now have no value to add to the world would be massively unfair, right? Everybody changes, and that's fine. I'm not the kind of person who's going to sit and apologize for his past. I believe all's well that ends well. I believe we're humans and we grow and we learn. I'd be a fool and I'd be disingenuous to sit here and pretend I was sorry for something I did in the past. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be very honest to everyone at home. I've talked at length for a very long time about my history and the fact I used to run a webcam business, and I don't feel guilty for that. I know that's maybe what they want from me. I don't feel sorry for that. I've never hurt anybody. It has nothing to do with my current criminal case. Everybody who worked for me was very positive. In fact, my number one supporter is currently online, and my best lifelong friends and some of the letters I got in jail were from people who worked for me at that time. And I had a business. And I'm not going to sit here and try and pretend that I feel guilty or I feel sorry for that. I'm from a low income background. I did what I had to do to survive. And truthfully, all in all, being very honest, I don't think what I did was really that bad. And I want to say that. And I know people are going to lose their minds for it, but I didn't sell drugs. I didn't kill anybody. I mean, what did I do?
He didn't sell drugs. He didn't kill anybody, because those are the only two terrible things people can do. If you didn't sell drugs, you don't kill people, you're perfectly fine. You can traffic women and scam men of their hard-earned money, but you have to draw the line at drugs and killing people. What a sense this guy is.
I found a gap in the market and I helped some people organize some accounts on an internet website. That's what I did. And they're going to try and criticize me and crucify me for the next 100 years because of it, because of clips that were made 10 years ago. I think it's disingenuous, and I don't think anyone actually really cares about the virtue of it, because nobody who was involved in my life back then is complaining about anything. I think it's just an attack on me.
It's astonishing that a question of how have you changed was answered with providing more justification for what he did in the so-called past and stating that he's not sorry for those things. But he never gets to the point of saying how he's actually changed, and she just let him get away with it. Candace and her ilks complained when Joe Biden is given a pass by the media, where they ask him softball questions and act as an advocate for him. Yet she did the exact same thing with Tate, never pushing back, just simply agreeing to what the man said. I can get the idea that she probably didn't want to come up as confrontational to her guest, but she could have done a lot better at pressing him on certain points, which she didn't. In the end, she's gotten what she wanted, the views, the clicks, the attention, and soon she will fade back into the background where she belongs when the dust settles in a few days' time.